So picture this. You're lying on a mat.
Right.
You're sweating through a tough Pilates class, pushing through a really intense set of abdominal exercises.
Yeah, you're shaking, you're feeling great about building that really strong core.
Exactly. But what if I told you that those exact movements might be secretly placing this dangerous amount of downward pressure on your pelvic organs?
I mean, it completely flips the script on what we consider healthy movement, you know?
It really does, because almost 60% of people who have given birth are walking around right now with structural physical damage to their pelvic floor.
Right, and the truly crazy part is that the very exercises we're universally told to do to, like, fix our core or get our bodies back, they might be making it significantly worse.
Yeah, movements like those intense Pilates hundreds, double leg lowers, heavy crunches, they could be the exact mechanism pushing those internal organs downward.
It's a huge issue. We have this ingrained assumption that any exercise labeled core strengthening is just automatically bulletproofing our bodies.
But it's not always true, which is exactly what we are focusing on today. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are tackling a highly specific and honestly pretty taboo question.
Does Pilates actually help or worsen vaginal laxity and pelvic floor dysfunction?
Right. And to figure this out, we are unpacking a massive stack of medical guidelines, physiotherapy protocols, and clinical studies. Our mission today is to understand the true anatomy of the core, the mechanical causes of vaginal laxity, and how you can exercise without doing more harm than good.
Because if you treat your core like it's just this aesthetic feature, just a flat stomach you see in the mirror, you are entirely missing the structural support system.
It's kind of like focusing only on the paint job of a car, right?
Okay.
While completely ignoring the engine and the suspension.
That's a perfect analogy. We really have to start by completely redefining what the core actually is.
Right, because most people just think core means the six-pack muscles.
Exactly, the rectus abdominis. But structurally, the core is not a single muscle at all. It operates as a three-dimensional cylinder.
Okay, so like a box.
Yeah, or you can think of it like a pressurized canister. The roof of this canister is your diaphragm, which is the primary muscle you use to breathe.
Got it. And the base.
The base, or the floor of the canister, is your pelvic floor. It's a sling of muscles that spans from your pubic bone to your tailbone.
Okay, so we have the roof and the floor. What about the sides?
The sides, the front, and the back are formed by this layered corset of muscles. The most important one here is the deep transversus abdominis.
The chi-RA.
Yes, the chi-RA. It wraps completely around your midsection like a wide belt. And you also have the multifidus muscles in the back that stabilize your spine.
So it's a completely sealed container. I actually like to visualize it as a water balloon.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Because if you squeeze the middle of a water balloon, the pressure doesn't just evaporate. The water has to go somewhere.
Right, the force gets instantly displaced to the weakest points.
Which are usually the top or the bottom of the balloon.
The physics of that are spot on. And the fascinating part is looking at how this container manages pressure dynamically, especially through the intimate synchronization between the roof and the base.
Because they're connected, right? Like mechanically.
Very much so. The diaphragm and the pelvic floor are designed to mirror each other's movements. When you inhale, your diaphragm physically contracts and descends downward.
Just to draw air into your lung.
Exactly. And because the diaphragm is pushing down into that sealed canister, the pelvic floor must naturally lengthen. It has to relax and yield downward to make space.
Right, it has to stretch to accommodate the organs being pushed down by the lungs.
Right. And then when you exhale, the mechanics reverse. The diaphragm rises back up into the chest cavity, and the pelvic floor reflexively lifts and engages.
So it returns to its starting position.
Yeah, it's this continuous dynamic rhythm that happens thousands of times a day. We can actually see this working in real time with ultrasound imaging and EMG studies.
EMG, that measures the electrical signals firing in the muscles.
Yeah, correct. And those studies show that the deepest abdominal layer, that TRA muscle, naturally co-contracts with the pelvic floor. When they fire together on an exhale, they optimize pelvic health.
But, I mean, life isn't a controlled breathing exercise on a yoga mat, you know?
Yeah, definitely not.
Like if I'm stressed at my desk, my shoulders are up by my ears, and my breathing gets really shallow and stuck in my upper chest, what does that do to the roof of our pressurized box?
It completely disrupts the entire system. When you breathe shallowly into your chest because of stress, the diaphragm doesn't descend fully.
So the pelvic floor never gets this signal to relax.
Exactly. The pelvic floor isn't getting that natural cue to yield and lengthen. It can essentially get stuck in a tense, rigid state.
Wow. And I imagine bad posture plays a role too.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
Add in chronic slouching, which compresses the front of the canister, or constantly tucking your pelvis under, and you have a recipe for severe dysfunction.
Which brings us to the actual workout part of this deep dive.
Right, the movement piece.
Since the core acts as this pressurized canister, the way we move our bodies during exercise dictates exactly where that pressure goes. So is a Pilates class a cure or a cause for pelvic floor issues?
Well, it can absolutely be either. It all comes down to how you manage intra-abdominal pressure or IAP.
Okay, let's look at when it hurts first. What's going wrong in those cases?
So intense abdominal exercises in traditional Pilates, think of the full 100 where you're hovering your legs and pumping your arms,
Oh yeah, those are brutal.
or double leg lowers, or aggressive abdominal curls. These movements dramatically spike intra-abdominal pressure.
Because you're just aggressively squeezing the sides of the water balloon. You're tightening that corset as hard as you can.
And if a person performs those intense moves while holding their breath, or if they brace their abs strongly without consciously lifting the pelvic floor first,
All that pressure has nowhere to go but down.
yes, it acts like a piston, forcing a heavy load directly onto the pelvic organs. Over time, this repetitive downward strain, it can worsen vaginal laxity,
Even if you haven't had a baby.
even if you haven't. Though it's especially risky if the tissues are already vulnerable from childbirth or menopause. It can cause stress urinary incontinence, which is leaking urine during exertion.
And in severe cases.
It leads to pelvic organ prolapse, where the bladder, uterus, or rectum actually lose their structural support and bulge into the vaginal canal.
That is terrifying. I mean, you're just in a studio trying to get a stronger core, and you're inadvertently pushing your own internal organs down and out of place.
It really highlights why technique and form are non-negotiable. Instructors need to be educated on this. And the research backs this up beautifully. There's this fascinating study from the CDC.
Oh, what did they look at?
They used whole body motion capture technology to analyze what actually drives this intra-abdominal pressure during movement.
And what did they find?
They found that almost 60% of the variability in IAP isn't just explained by how hard you are contracting your abdominal muscles.
Wait, really? Then what's driving it?
It's heavily influenced by your respiration patterns, so whether you are inhaling, exhaling, or holding your breath, and crucially, by your hip acceleration.
Hip acceleration. How fast you move your hips affects the internal pressure of your organs.
Yeah, physics dictates that the speed and force of your body movements transfer mechanical load directly through your center of mass.
Okay, so if I'm lying on my back,
And you're doing rapid, jerky, double leg drops, whipping your legs down toward the floor while holding your breath, you are creating a perfect storm.
because the heavy leg bones are pulling on the pelvis.
Exactly. The rapid acceleration pulls on the pelvis while the held breath traps the pressure inside the canister. That pressure just violently slams downward onto the pelvic floor.
Okay, so if we are doing it wrong, it is an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
But when does Pilates actually help? Because it is historically recommended for core rehab, right?
Pilates is an excellent tool, provided it is modified to protect what we call the weakest link in the canister. Good rehabilitative Pilates uses specific techniques to manage that internal pressure.
Like what kind of techniques?
One of the most effective methods mentioned in the physical therapy protocols is the use of hypopressive exercises.
Let's break that down, because hypopressive is not a word you hear in a standard gym class. What does that actually mean mechanically?
Well, hypo means low, so these are low-pressure exercises. Mechanically, they involve a specific breathing technique where you fully exhale and then perform a false inhale.
A false inhale, like you fake taking a breath.
Right. You expand your rib cage as if you're taking a breath, but you don't actually let any air in. This creates a powerful vacuum effect inside the abdominal cavity.
Oh, wow.
And that vacuum literally sucks the diaphragm upward and passively draws the pelvic organs and the pelvic floor up with it. It works entirely against gravity to relieve downward pressure.
That is wild. It's literally like using suction to lift everything back into place.
It's incredibly effective. Good Pilates also uses dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, which focuses on retraining the brain to fire the core muscles in the correct sequence.
So instead of jumping straight into aggressive crunches,
You focus on foundational moves like gentle knee drops and knee floats where you can easily control the pressure. And the golden rule is always, always exhaling with effort.
exhaling when the move is hardest.
Yes. You want to intentionally cue a lift of the pelvic floor on the exhale right when the mechanical load of the exercise is at its highest.
I have to stop you there, though,
Oh,
because everything you were describing, yielding the pelvic floor, managing pressure, breathing deeply into the belly, it completely contradicts the entire fitness industry.
I know, it really
We
does.
are constantly told to suck it in, navel to spine, brace your core all day while you sit at your desk so you don't hurt your back.
Hmm.
Are you saying everyone actively sucking in their stomach is ruining their pelvic floor?
It is a massive problem. And yes, that constant aesthetic bracing is highly detrimental.
Because you're just squeezing the canister all day.
Exactly. Constant bracing means you are keeping the sides of the canister rigidly squeezed all day long. This makes the pelvic floor overly tight, stiff, and unable to move.
It just gets locked up.
We call this a hypertonic pelvic floor. And here is the counterintuitive part that shocks most people. A tight pelvic floor is very often a profoundly weak pelvic floor.
Well, yeah, because a muscle that is clenched 24/7 has no functional power left.
Precisely. Muscle physiology requires a full range of motion. A muscle must be able to fully relax and lengthen in order to contract powerfully when you actually need it to.
Right, like if I walk around flexing my bicep all day.
Yes. If you walked around all day with your elbow bent and your bicep clenched as hard as possible, the muscle would become exhausted, cramped, and weak.
And if someone asked me to lift a heavy box, I wouldn't be able to do it.
The pelvic floor is the exact same. That constant stiff bracing contributes heavily to urinary urgency, leaking when you sneeze, and even chronic pelvic pain.
Because the muscle is just fatigued and locked up.
Mm.
So, knowing that this excessive downward pressure can damage these tissues, let's look at what is actually happening on a structural level.
It's important to understand the physical reality of it.
When we talk about vaginal laxity, what is physically occurring, and why does it feel like half the population is dealing with this in total silence?
So the clinical definition from international gynecological associations is excessive vaginal flaccidity, and it is vital to clarify that this is a somatic physical dysfunction.
Meaning it's a real structural change.
Yes, to the tissues themselves. It is not psychogenic. It's not just in someone's head, which sadly is how women's health issues are often dismissively treated.
Yeah, that's infuriating. And as I mentioned at the top of the deep dive, the sources say this affects up to 58% of new mothers.
58%, it's a huge number.
That is a staggering number of people dealing with a structural injury. What are the actual mechanisms causing the tissue to change like that?
Childbirth is the most common trigger, naturally. The mechanics of a vaginal delivery are intense. During crowning, the vaginal tissue has to stretch significantly.
And it doesn't always just bounce back.
No, the collagen fibers, which give the tissue its elasticity, can be expanded far beyond their normal recoil capacity. Furthermore, the levator antemuscles, the main structural sling of the pelvic floor, can suffer micro tears.
Wait, they can actually tear?
Or even avulse, meaning they literally tear away from their attachment point at the pubic bone.
So the physical hammock holding everything up actually gets frayed or detached.
Yes, the structural integrity is severely compromised. But it's important to note it isn't just childbirth. Aging and menopause play a massive role, too.
Just because of the hormonal changes.
Exactly. As estrogen levels drop during menopause, it leads to vaginal atrophy. The mucosal lining of the vaginal walls physically thins out, blood flow decreases, and the tissue loses its natural elasticity.
Are there any other factors?
Genetics play a part. Connective tissue disorders like Marfan or Ehlers-Danlos syndromes make a person's collagen inherently more fragile. And then looping back to our pressure canister, chronic coughing from asthma, chronic constipation, and obesity all place a heavy downward stress on that weakened base.
And the symptoms outlined in the medical sources, they sound so debilitating. They highlight reduced sexual sensation, air trapping inside the vagina during movement, stress, urinary incontinence.
And an overriding massive loss of personal confidence and quality of life. The psychological and emotional impact cannot be overstated.
People probably alter their entire lives. They stop running, avoid intimacy.
They absolutely do. Yet, despite how common it is, there is a profound information gap. Data from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the RC in the UK, paints a really bleak picture of how we educate people.
Oh, what did their survey find?
They found that 24% of UK women have never done a single pelvic floor exercise in their lives.
Never.
Never. And 88% know what the pelvic floor is, but they lack the confidence to actually do the exercises correctly.
If this affects over half of new mothers and practically anyone going through menopause, why does it feel like this big secret?
It's a systemic failure. The RCOG data also noted that 69% of women have never even been spoken to by their healthcare providers about their pelvic floor.
It is wild that such a crucial part of human anatomy is largely ignored until something fundamentally breaks, which leads to a really practical question.
Go for it.
If it's completely internal, how does someone even know if they are doing a Kegel right? You can't exactly look in a mirror and check your form the way you can with a bicep curl.
That invisible nature is exactly why people lack confidence and why so many people do them wrong. But the clinical physiotherapy sources provide very specific physical cues.
Okay, so what should it actually feel like?
A correct Kegel feels like stopping the flow of urine and stopping the passing of gas simultaneously.
Okay, both at once.
It is a squeeze of the sphincters, but crucially, it is also a lift inward and upward toward your belly button.
So squeeze the openings and lift the whole structure up.
Yes, and what you absolutely shouldn't do is just as important. You should not be clenching your buttocks. You should not be squeezing your inner thighs together.
And going back to the pressure canister, I assume you shouldn't hold your breath.
You absolutely must not hold your breath. If you try to do a Kegel and you feel your belly pushing or bulging outward, you are actually bearing down.
You're doing the exact opposite of what you want, pushing the organs lower.
Exactly. So now that we've mapped out the anatomy and the root causes, let's talk about the evidence-based solutions.
Yes, please. Because nobody should have to just accept leaking or laxity as their permanent new normal. How do we actually reverse this?
The clinical approach is structured as a step-by-step ladder of interventions, always starting with the most conservative options first.
So starting at home in the living room.
Right. At home, the gold standard is consistent pelvic floor muscle training, or PFMT. And this isn't just randomly squeezing when you remember to at a red light.
Oh, I think that's what most people do, honestly.
Right, but national guidelines recommend a very specific hypertrophy protocol. You do a 10-second sustained hold, and you repeat that 10 times.
Okay, 10 holds for 10 seconds.
Then you immediately follow it with 10 fast, quick flick lifts to train the fast twitch muscle fibers, and you do this entire set 3 times a day.
A 10-second hold 10 times plus 10 fast lifts done 3 times a day. That is a serious, dedicated workout protocol.
It is literal muscle building, just like hitting the gym to grow your glutes. And speaking of larger movements, modifying lower body exercises helps tremendously too.
Really like squats.
Yes, body weight squats are highly effective if the mechanics are right. You stand with feet slightly wider than the hips, and as you stand back up, you intentionally push your weight through your heels.
Why the heels specifically?
Pushing through the heels mechanically recruits the glutes and naturally co-contracts the pelvic floor, lifting it upward as you rise. Yoga poses like bridge pose also use gravity to help safely train the lift.
That 10-second hold protocol makes total sense for isolating the muscle, and the squats help integrate it into movement. But what happens if exercises just aren't enough?
You mean if the tissue is too damaged?
Yeah, like what if the collagen is completely stretched out from childbirth, or the mucosal tissue is severely thinned out from menopause?
It's empowering to know the latter doesn't just stop at Kegels. When physical training reaches its limit, we move to non-surgical medical interventions.
Like what? What are we looking at here?
We are seeing incredible clinical results with energy-based devices, radiofrequency treatments like Thamiva, and laser therapies, specifically CO2 and erbium lasers, are being used very effectively.
Okay, I have to ask, how does shooting a laser into vaginal tissue actually tighten it structurally?
It is all based on the principle of controlled thermal trauma. These devices deliver highly precise microscopic columns of heat into the subdermal layers.
And that heat does what? Shrinks it.
It causes the existing stretched-out collagen fibers to instantly contract and thicken, but more importantly, it triggers the body's natural womb healing cascade.
It stimulates fibroblasts to produce brand new collagen and elastin fibers over the following months.
Yes, it remodels the tissue from the inside out, visibly thickening the vaginal walls and restoring elasticity.
So it's essentially tricking the body into hyper-repairing itself.
Precisely. And alongside the energy devices, the sources outline advanced injectables, like platelet-rich plasma or PRP.
That's where they spin down your blood, right?
Right. They draw a small amount of your own blood, spin it down, and inject the concentrated growth factors into the vaginal walls to stimulate intense cellular repair. There are also specialized hyaluronic acid fillers, like a product called Deserial.
Like the filler people get in their faces?
Similar molecule, different application. Hyaluronic acid is famous because it can hold up to 1,000 times its weight in water.
Oh, so it rehydrates the tissue.
Exactly. And injected into the vaginal mucosa, particularly for women experiencing severe menopausal atrophy and dryness, it draws in massive amounts of hydration. It mechanically replumps the tissue.
And then, if the structural damage is beyond what lasers or fillers can repair, say, a significant livator anti-avulsion from a traumatic childbirth, we reach the top of the ladder, right? Surgery.
Yes, vaginoplasty is the surgical option for severe laxity. This involves a surgeon going in and physically suturing the separated pelvic floor muscles back together and excising the excess mucosal tissue.
Are the outcomes good for that?
Very strong. They boast an 88 to 90% improvement in sexual function scores and structural support. But the medical sources heavily emphasize preventative care in the delivery room to avoid needing surgery in the first place.
Right. Prevention is key. What does that look like?
It's called the OASI Care Bundle Obstetric Anal Sphincter Injury. It's a set of vital clinical protocols being adopted in maternity services.
What do those protocols actually look like in practice during a delivery?
They include standardized practices like warm perineal compresses to increase tissue elasticity and hands-on support of the perineum by the midwife or doctor as the baby's head crowns.
Just to help guide the stretching safely.
Yes, and ensuring that if an episiotomy is necessary, it is cut at a very specific 60-degree angle to direct tearing away from the core pelvic floor muscles. It is all about mitigating structural trauma before it happens.
So, looking at the entire landscape, we have this incredible spectrum of options, from simply breathing correctly in a Pilates class, to targeted home hypertrophy protocols, all the way to advanced collagen-stimulating lasers and surgical repair.
You never have to just silently live with it.
But navigating that ladder, especially when the muscles are totally internal and invisible, it sounds pretty daunting.
Which is why the single most crucial piece of advice echoing across all of these clinical sources is to seek out a specialized pelvic health physiotherapist.
Don't just try to guess on your own.
Exactly. Because the pelvic floor is a hidden muscle, self-assessment is notoriously inaccurate. A specialist can do an internal examination or use biofeedback machines which display your muscle contractions on a screen in real time.
To ensure you are actually lifting the muscle, rather than just bearing down and inadvertently making your prolapse worse.
Right. They take the guesswork out of the entire process.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's bring everything we've unpacked today together. When it comes to your core and your pelvic floor, technique, breath, and internal awareness absolutely trump brute force.
Absolutely. A Pilates class can be your greatest ally, building a resilient core that lifts your organs. Or it can be your worst enemy.
Functioning like a pressurized piston that forces your organs downward. It depends entirely on how you manage your intra-abdominal pressure.
The overriding takeaway is recognizing that your body is a deeply interconnected system. The pelvic floor does not exist in isolation.
Taking care of it is just as much about addressing your daily posture, unwinding your stress so your diaphragm has room to move, and managing your breathing patterns.
Just as much as it is about doing those targeted 10-second Kegel holds.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on today. We live in a society that highly prizes the aesthetic of a flat, constantly sucked-in stomach.
We see it on magazine covers, all over social media. It's so ingrained in our fitness culture.
But considering what we've just learned about the physics of intra-abdominal pressure, the necessity of a dynamic breath cycle, and the absolute functional dangers of a hypertonic, locked-up pelvic floor, could our modern aesthetic obsession with holding it all in actually be a leading cause of the very pelvic floor dysfunction we are so desperately trying to avoid?
It's definitely something to think about.
Something to deeply consider the next time you catch yourself holding your breath and bracing your stomach for a photo.